Before I begin the video, I just want to flag, as always, that I am not a qualified financial advisor and nothing I say should be considered as financial advice. Okay, so hello everyone. So welcome to episode 7 of the Let's Chat About Money podcast series. So today I have a special guest. So I've got the owner of the Instagram account, Sim for a New Way, joining us. So I've been following this account for a while. So they were on a mortgage-free goal and they actually hit mortgage freedom in June of this year. So I thought it'd be great to have a chat about their journey, how it's went, if they've got any tips, um, and just about how being mortgage free feels. So, is there anything you want to say in terms of introduction about yourself?
So there's nothing really. I'm not very interesting. I come from a pardon me. I come from a working class background. I was terrible with money up until about 5, well, maybe a little bit longer, 8 years maybe. We are a double income household. We don't have any children, and we own a 3-bedroom semi-detached house near Newcastle in the northeast of England. There's not really much to say about myself, really. I've been with the same employer since I was 18. My husband is commission based for work, which means that we don't have a set amount of money that comes in per month, which can mean that budgeting is quite difficult.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And you said about um sort of being not as good with money up until 5 to 8 years ago. What
Yeah.
what prompted the shift in getting good with money? Was it something prompt that
Um,
or?
yeah, I mean, my husband and I, we've been together for 17 years, 18 years, I think. And he's always been really, really good with money. I wasn't. And after some comments being made by someone years and years ago, when we first moved in together, I made sure that I paid half of everything, which I know is something that's quite often debated on Instagram. Do you go on how much someone earns for percentage wise? But after some kind of nasty comment made, I always made sure that I paid half of all of our bills. And that caused a lot of problems in our relationship because I didn't have the spare money to go out and do things. So I couldn't afford the nights out. I couldn't afford all of the holidays that we wanted to do. And just kind of day things like, if the boiler went, I would have to pay half of that. And sometimes that was clearing out all of my surplus cash from that month. Um, so I think about 8, 9 years ago, we kind of had like I wasn't going to say bad time, but we had a kind of a period where it was like, right, I can't afford to do all of this, and he really wants to do this. So we decided to merge the money, which is very old fashioned, but it works for us, and I think that is something that a lot of people, I mean, it don't get us wrong, there's negatives to sharing your money, but there's also positives. So we can work on the goals that we want to do together. So basically we put the money together in one pot, and we use that in order to be able to save for things. So we got married 7 years ago. So that was a joint expense. We then started doing up our house bit by bit. So I had a new bathroom in the beginning of 2020, just before lockdown. And during lockdown, I think everyone found that there was bits and pieces around their house that they wanted to do. So one of ours was our kitchen. And that's when I started to really get into money saving. I'd always been quite good from probably 2018, 2019, would started overpaying the mortgage. But from 2020 to 21, I really got into it because we were both threatened with redundancy during lockdown.
Mm,
And that kind of brought forward kind of where we need to be in order to be able to survive on what like on a minimal wage. If something happened to both of us, if we had money in the bank, how long would we actually be able to cope and live on that money? Um, so it was kind of a gradual process as to how extreme I went to money saving.
yeah. Yeah, I know you've covered a lot of interesting ground there. So the first bit I was going to ask about was, I think the paying 50/50 one, like, is quite an interesting topic because me and my partner, I earn at the moment I earn more than my partner does,
Yeah,
and but at the start we started in a bit of a 50/50 one, but then I was like, it's hard because as you say, when you're in a relationship, you want to both do nice things. So
yeah,
it's very hard if you're like, I remember I said, I think it was 2019 and 2018, I said, oh, we want to go, let's go to New York. And he was a bit like, well, yeah, like that's great, but I don't like that's going to be a lot for me to save up.
yeah,
And I was
yeah,
like, yeah, but I've got like I've got a surplus, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
mind. But then I think
totally.
it's that sort of you don't really want there to be a power dynamic in a
Yeah, yeah,
relationship as well. So it's such an
yeah,
interesting thing. So now we do it sort of proportional to our income in terms of
yeah,
putting things in.
yeah,
And and I think the main thing is like if we've got treats, like if we are gonna go away, like I don't mind kind of putting more in. I don't really record it. I don't say, oh, I paid
yeah, yeah,
£500 extra for that holiday, so you owe it back. Like, but it's one of those things you just have to see what works for you. Because my brothers and my sister, I think we all have different way. Like I think some of my brothers they have like joint accounts. But then even then I think they have a bit of a how do you yourself, how do you do it like for personal spending money, like when you've got a joint account? Because I'm a bit confused at how that works.
So we've got a joint account, and that is where everything comes out of. We do have our own separate Chase accounts, and
Mm.
that's where I have all of our sinking funds, which to
Right.
my payments are basically non-existent. Um, but we have separate accounts for basically because the rate of interest on savings is way better on Chase
Mm.
than any other high street bank. The problem we are getting at the moment, we bank through Santander as our main account, and we're trying to look at getting a better account that we can then have joint savings, which we can't seem to find. And we think it might be something to do with like having too much money in, like maybe for tax reasons. We're not entirely sure. Um, so basically, we everything comes out of that account. And I think one of the things we really struggled with at the beginning was things like going on things for friends. So like hen do's, stag do's, weekends away with friends, not things together.
Mm.
I'm younger, only by 3 years, but I'm still at that age where the hen do's were kind of happening quite regularly. The nights out were a lot. Whereas my husband, he didn't have that because his friends were older than him. They'd
Mm.
already had the stags, they'd already had the festivals, they'd already, you know, done these things that were quite a lot of money. Um, so something like what we've just done this week, we've just been to see AC/DC in Wembley on Wednesday. And when they originally came out, I was like, well, do you not want to go with your friends? And he was like, well, no, because you enjoyed them, we'll go together. We've spent a substantial amount of money from Tuesday to Friday, Thursday, sorry, on that trip down. If he had have done that with a friend, I kind of feel like I would have been a bit resentful. We're
Mm.
talking thousands of pounds that we've spent for 3 days away.
Yeah.
Um, so that is something where I think when we first did it, it was kind of like give or take, give and take. But I also used to spend a substantial amount of money on clothing, and
Yeah.
I was Assos's favourite customer for a long time. And because you've both got eyes on that account, it's not as if you're kind of checking like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? But you kind of analyze it, especially when you come to a budget and you go, well, hang on, you've spent, one thing we do notice is that my husband's got a fondness for popping to B&M's because he works close by. And you'll pop in and you'll go, right, I'll just grab this and I'll just grab that. And it is things for the household, but you kind of go, right, you don't realise how much you're spending when you just pop in and grab these bits. So it's kind of it's hard to see other people spending what you think is your money. So you're checking what he's spending, and he's checking what I'm spending as well. But we're at now, after we've been doing this for quite a while, we're at that point now where we go, right, well, this is what this is for. We're not, we're kind of more understanding. We don't feel like the other one is trying like take the mick and
Yeah.
overspend on other things. So yeah, it's quite difficult, and it's quite an old way of managing money. I know a lot of friends are like, oh God, I wouldn't want my husband to see all of the money, but it's kind of a trust thing as well. I'm not saying that, any other relationship isn't effective, like, people are untrusted, but you've got to kind of trust that the other person isn't going to go, actually, I'm going to go and do a food shop. I'm going to go do like a shop for clothing and spend £300 in, I don't know, Debenhams or, wherever, John Lewis. You've got to trust that the other person is not going to go and do that unless he's a kind of like, right, well, actually, we need to do this. We need, both of us need a pair of trainers. We need to go and do this, that, and the other. But yeah, that's how we kind of manage it. And it does work. There are some times when we look and go, right, that's a lot of money we've spent on stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I do notice, because me and my partner, we keep our money separate, for things. But that's sometimes what's hard to see is joint what you're paying, like what's costing the most money. Do you know what I mean? Like I think sometimes your spending individually can get out of hand, because if you're just looking at yourself and go, oh, I've just spent, I don't know, £200 on meals out this month,
Yeah.
you might think, oh, that's okay, that's been a bit of a splurge for me. But then actually, if you look collectively and then you top up the numbers, because
Yeah.
you then, because I did that recently, because I think I said to my partner, I said, oh, well, why don't, like, because you can take the CSVs of your bank accounts, like,
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
spending, you can put it in Excel. And I said, oh, why don't we, like, I'll look at our spending so far this year, and like I'll do a tab for you, a tab for me, and then
Yeah.
total them up. And then honestly, it was scary. And then we were on a mission to be like, right, like there's no way, like, why we should have like not much in the emergency fund when we've
Yeah.
spent all this money on Greg's and
Yeah.
takeaways. So it was quite a good motivator to kind of show us that we're maybe being a bit too frivolous with mainly it's takeaway
Yeah.
meals are like convenient spending, and
Yeah.
because it all adds up, you think, oh, £3 at Greg's,
Yeah.
that's fine. But then actually, if you do it every day, it
Yeah.
definitely adds up.
We had that when we first started, like, kind of budgeting. There was an app that did it for you. And I can't remember what the name was, but I know the lady who I used to work with did it. And she was like, I can't believe how much I spend on B&M's, home bargains, the
Mm,
shops where you go, I'll just nip in and grab some bleach. And you come out and you spend £45 on stuff.
yeah,
Um, when we started budgeting, I printed out all of our bank accounts and highlighted what everything was, which is basically just another version of what you've done.
yeah,
But seeing it highlighted, so I think I've done pink for all of the standard bills, yellow for all the food shops. And it was the food shops where I was terrible. I used to work in the centre of well, on the quayside in Newcastle, and we had a Tesco Express. And I'd go there every lunchtime and grab something, even if it was, a bag of like apples
mm,
or a loaf of bread to take home. And it was those little things that we noticed were the bits where we really needed to reduce, because we're buying a lot of stuff and wasting quite a lot of food. And we've never been big takeaway fans. But meals out, we would quite happily go once a week for a meal out.
yeah.
And that is something that now is just for kind of celebrations or the odd time we'll go out. But because we're on holiday, I'd rather save that for once we're all away,
Yeah, yeah,
proper holiday, and not have to cook and clean.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I think it's like it's quite nice when meals out become a bit more of a special thing,
Yeah,
because otherwise you just get used to it, don't you? And then
yeah,
it does it
absolutely.
it's just convenience rather than being like for an occasion. And in terms of mortgage free, so you mentioned sort of um the driving force a bit behind that being about kind of threats of redundancy and things.
Yeah.
So into did you kind of ever consider before then about being mortgage free? So did you know that some people paid off the mortgages quicker or not? Because I know I didn't.
No, basically, sorry. No, I remember. So when we used to go through the mortgage process of, you'd had the mortgage 3 years and the fixed term came to an end, my husband would always deal with that because he had the savings. So over time, he's definitely paid off more in mortgage overpayments before we merged for money. Um, but we had never heard of it. It wasn't ever something that had been spoken about. My parents had paid it off, but they had got inheritance. it wasn't a case of they'd worked for it.
Mm.
Not that I'm saying they didn't deserve it, but it was just one of those things. They got a substantial amount of money inheritance and paid their mortgage off. My husband's parents, they had it 30-year term, and that was it. I remember them paying it off because we were together. And it wasn't until we started kind of looking at these things, and I'd kind of joined the finance community way before I opened my account, but I'd started realizing like, oh, people do this mortgage overpayment. And I remember going on our app for Santander and scrolling through and looking at my mortgage and stuff, because our payment was never high. We've never had a high mortgage, but it was still a bill every month. That money
Yeah.
came, and looking at how much interest was made up of that amount was kind of like, wow, that's a lot of money we're paying, which is basically not even going against how much we own on the house. So we've never really heard of it, and it wasn't until we started mentioning it to people about probably about 2 years ago, and we really thought, right, we can do this. This is actually possible. We mentioned it, I think, my husband's grandparents, his grandma, and she went, "Oh yeah, that's what we did." And I was like, "What? Like you don't think of, especially
Mm.
not grandparents' age, people in their 80s, 90s, they've done this years and years ago, but it's not spoken about. I think now, I love Martin Lewis, and I will quite happily watch him regularly. But he mentions it, and he always says, if you've got money, if your savings is the percentage on savings is higher than your mortgage, then put it in savings. And I don't remember ever kind of listening to that part, because I didn't think that would ever happen to us.
Mm.
So I think 2021, we had our kitchen done. And that's when I kind of looked and thought, I've saved quite a substantial amount of money. This could be possible. We could do this.
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of started thinking, right, this is what I need to do in order to get this money saved. And it was a case of cutting out a lot of stuff. And lockdown did help.
Mm.
My husband got an average commission during lockdown, so his pay was still coming in. I was still working, so we had all this extra money because we weren't going on holidays, we weren't going out for meals. Pardon me, we weren't doing, we weren't using petrol.
Yeah.
So money was kind of saving up, and you're seeing it thinking, well, actually, that's a security blanket. That money, if something went wrong, that money was great, we could have it, but longer term, could we pay off this mortgage and have that freedom of not having to pay that set amount each month, that bill. So yeah, it was a kind of a slow process to come to the idea of, oh, we can do this. But then once we got in the mindset of, right, we're going to do it, it was like, right, we're not going to deprive ourselves. We'll still have regular holidays, but we are going to go, right, well, actually, we'll make the compromise. We won't do this, and we'll save extra money. And I think you kind of sort of get addicted when you see the money, the percentage. You're like, oh yeah, I'll keep on doing this, and we'll see how we can do it. Which is on my grid. You used to be able to see like the percentage calculator every month, and it would go like, right, well, this kind of motivates you a bit more. So I'm quite happy to cut out, like you say, the Gregs, all the pardon me, the takeaways, in order to see that percentage sign go.
Yeah. And how did you do it? Because I followed your kind of percentage calculator every time, but I didn't know if it was if you actually put the money, like sent the money to the mortgage provider, or whether you had the money sitting in a pot waiting for like one lump sum overpayment.
Yeah, so when we used to do it, probably 22 and 23, the 1st of January, that was our start of the new year. So we could send 10% of our outstanding mortgage straight through as an overpayment. So that's what we used to do. So we then didn't pay extra throughout the year. We just saved it because the percentage for savings was higher than the mortgage. This year, however, it was different. We didn't pay it off because, like I say, the percentage was higher, and it was higher by about 3%. So we were like, well, actually, no, we're getting a lot more money in savings than we would against paying it off for the mortgage. So we just had it in our Chase account, which was 5.1%, I think it was at the time.
Yeah.
That is a lot more than what our mortgage was. I can't remember. I think it was like 2.34 we had fixed for. So So yeah, so we just kept it separate. So when I first started doing the overpayment, and this is something that I people kind of laugh at when I explain it. I used to, on a Saturday night after a few drinks, I used to sit on ASOS and order so much stuff. And I used to get to live at the work on a Monday morning. And it was like kind of a laughing, running joke at work that, oh, Helen's had a delivery. And what I started to do was put all the things in my basket in ASOS, look at how much it was, and think, right, well, I was going to spend £70 on clothes that I didn't need. So and it started becoming kind of a joke. And my husband would laugh and he'd be like, "Oh, God's sakes, like that's just it's just daft." But it was kind of little things like that where you kind of went, "Well, actually, I was going to waste that money on clothes that I didn't need. Why not do it with something that's going to actually make a difference with my life?"
Yeah.
And that kind of those were the smaller steps I was taking. I never in my life thought this was probably 2019. Never in my life thought 5 years time I'll be able to pay this off, but those little steps were kind of getting us into a better
Yeah.
money sense. To me, it did, anyways. So yeah, those were the little ways that we started making changes,
Yeah.
rather than the big like, right, we'll save X amount per month, and making sure that that's going straight against the mortgage pot rather than into sinking funds or holiday pots, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I do think it's like it's whatever you can do to make spending money feel more intentional, because I think the problem I find, like, I think technology is amazing, but the
Yeah,
fact that I've got an Apple Watch where I can pay by
yeah,
contactless is
oh yeah,
it's so dangerous because you don't link the two. You just always think, oh well, it's just a tap of the watch. You're not like counting cash and saying how much have I got
yeah,
left in my wallet. And to be honest, I've considered like, oh, like, because I know there's some people who only do go by cash, but then I'm like, I just that to me that's like would feel such an inconvenience because there's some places that's card only.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some, and then also when you get left with the change, like it's like what you end up not really using the change
yeah,
too much. So I'm like, I just need to be more intentional when I'm spending my money. I just need to be like limit how many times I go to the corner shop and think
yeah,
I'm doing one grocery shop a week
yes,
and I
yeah,
need to get everything in that. And I think that sort of worked for me. But as you say, yeah, it is good to think about those things like what's the cost of, or if I've spent money on clothes. We even had that last week. We went out for a meal and went out this restaurant and we didn't
mm,
enjoy the meal, but we'd paid like £70 between the two of us.
yeah.
And I was like, like one, like we could have put that to our holiday in the summer and had like that
Yeah,
would have paid for a meal when we're on
yeah,
holiday.
yeah.
So
It is quite difficult, kind of. When we were in London this week, it's kind of we did a lot of tourist things, and I knew it was going to be expensive, but we ended up going way over what I had budget to do. And like you say, contactless is just far too easy. And Apple Pay, I mean, I was sat there and we went for breakfast somewhere. And I sat and my husband was like, "Oh, do you want to do this, that, and the other?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's fine." And before we'd even finished the conversation, I booked it and paid by Apple Pay. And I was like, "Right, okay, we're booked in for such and such." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He doesn't have his card linked to his phone, which can sometimes be a pain. But other times it's really handy. Um, and we ended up booking like a lot of things, but contactless. What annoys me, and actual payments, I'm still waiting for some of our tube payments to come out of the account.
mm,
So I want to see how much I've actually spent in tube journeys, because it's contactless now. You just jump on, flash your card, and jump through, like, however many stations you're going through, and on and off doing various bits and pieces. And it's things like that where you don't see, and also who's got those bank details. I remember seeing a couple of days ago on the news, well, I think it was on this morning or something like that, where they were saying sometimes subscriptions start with your card details. So you might sign up and not realize that actually you have to cancel it within a certain amount of time, because the money
yeah,
just comes out automatically. And how many times do you hear people going, "Oh, I signed up for Amazon Music and I hadn't realized I'd done that."
yeah,
Apple Music and things, where if you were paying cash, you would remember that you were paying these things. But in London, you couldn't pay cash. It was very, very, you know, it's not frowned upon. But I remember going to this street vendor and I was like, all right, can I pay cash or card? And she was like, card. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Whereas we'd been down in Devon the week beforehand and they wanted the cash because small independent retailers can't afford the service charge on the card.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you don't realize how the big differences between being able to pay cash or card make to businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, because I do think I always have to get in a habit of actually regularly checking my bank account to check that there's no like subscriptions that I forgot to
Yeah.
cancel, or even just the thing of like being wary of like fraud. Like, because I've
Oh,
heard things about where people might take out like £1, and then
yeah,
like
yeah,
that
yeah,
goes unnoticed, and then that sort of creeps up over time. And if someone's not checking, they could have like a couple of £100 a month out your bank account. So
yeah.
it's things like that where I'm always very mindful of. But yeah, it's funny because my partner, he's like. He doesn't like. I'm trying to get in the habit, and he's improved really, really like at checking his bank account a bit more often. But I'm
Yeah,
like, you should just check it just to check that you're not signed up to something. Because
yeah.
I'm like, you need to. I like to know where my money's going. Like, I like it all to be accounted for. But yeah. So that was
Um,
also one of the purposes of when we did this exercise of looking what we spent over the 6 months. I
yeah.
wanted to like point out the bits of like, do you know that you've got this random subscription that's coming out at £10 a month?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being at work one day, and this is going back a few years ago, and I remember being in a bit of a funny mood, and one of the girls was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Oh, just my husband bought something off a website, and I don't think it's legit." And they're like, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter; it's his money." And I was like, "No, you're letting someone have access to your bank account. You're
Yeah,
getting paid in, thousands of pounds a month, um in order and they've got access to this amount, like this money. That's quite bad." But I remember them being like, "Oh, I think you're being a bit dramatic." And I was like, "No, like that's where our salary goes in." And at the time our savings were also in that same bank.
yeah,
And it was kind of like, oh my god, I can't believe that people just don't check their bank accounts. Like I always checked it and kind of went, oh god, there's nothing there. This was before I got quite money savvy. And you just couldn't believe that people are just like, oh yeah, well, it's a few pound here, a few pound there. And then a couple of months later, it was the same person who went, yeah, I've started analysing where my money goes and realising that I am spending a significant amount of money on rubbish. And I feel like some people kind of, yeah, I think something like my sister, I was taking the mick out of it, and she kept on going, "Oh God, you're obsessed by money." And I'm like, I'm not obsessed by money, but I need to know where my money's going. I never thought that I had a livable wage on is one income. Um, Whereas now I'm like, actually, my wage isn't as low as I thought. I can get a lot more as long as I'm planning, as long as I'm checking what I am spending and kind of analysing, like, do I need that? We get our food delivery, um, and I'll go with a certain brand, and people go, well, yeah, but it'd be cheaper if you go to Aldi. And I'm like, but if I go to Aldi, I'll go off list. I'll be
yeah,
buying all oh, this is on offer, and oh, this looks nice. Whereas if I do one delivery a week, fair enough, I may pay a little bit more for it, but I'm not doing all of the extra, like, oh, this is on offer, this is a multi buy. I'm buying what I need and not wasting it and not going spending hundreds of pounds extra when I don't need to.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And how does it feel now that you're mortgage free? Like, do you feel, I mean, I've heard things of people being like it's a bit anticlimactic because you're like you expect like it to just feel wonderful that you suddenly don't have a mortgage payment. But yeah, how does it feel?
Yeah, it is very anticlimactic. You ring up to pay it off, and you're like, because you can. There's various ways you can do it, but I was like, can I just ring up? And they're like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I said, I told them what, like, sent the money across, this, that, and the other. And she went, all right, is there anything else I can help you with? And I was like, I kind of want a fanfare at the end of that. Like, I was sent over a substantial amount of money. I'm expecting something, like ta-da, and it didn't. And to be fair, last month we went on holiday, and we didn't have to worry. I didn't have to think, oh God, we're spending, £50 on a meal out. That £50 could be towards the mortgage. So I think it'll take a little time to kind of go, right, well, that money's now free. That's freed up in our budget. Um, so that money can now be used for XYZ. At the moment, we are trying to just enjoy it for a little bit before we start moving on to the next objective. So yeah, it is, it's a bit of an odd feeling. I got the letter through last week whilst we were away, and came back and said your account is now closed. And I was like, yes, excellent. So I work in a law firm, and I know how title, when you get your register from the land registry, I know that we won't have a charge against our register, which that's kind of like, oh, that's fantastic, we don't have that. But that, you tell people like, oh yeah, well done. You're kind of like, no, it's fantastic. Like, it's really good. But I think it's also the British way, you don't talk about money.
Mm.
So when you say it, you kind of, we've told our parents and like a few like close friends, but you don't want to tell too many people, because, and I feel like that's one of the reasons I kind of held back putting it on the Instagram account, because you don't want people thinking, all right, well, they've shown off, they're rubbing your nose in it, when people are in
Yeah.
so much debt now, from cost of living, from change of circumstances. You don't want to go, oh yay, I want to celebrate this, because you don't want to look as though, oh well, I'm showing off. And so yeah, to, like, us two are like, yes, excellent, it's done. But now we're kind of moving on to our next goals, where I'm like, damn, got to start again. That we've got to start saving for a new car. We've got to start saving for like our next house that we want to move to. We've got to start saving probably for a new boiler, which we've kind of realised that we need to put a little bit more into this house. So yeah, so I think once you've paid the mortgage off, it is one kind of one goal down. What's next? So
Yeah.
yeah, it does feel good, but it's kind of I don't quite know how to explain it. It kind of that's like a tick box, like fantastic, you've done that, but what's the next thing that's going to come along that
Yeah.
you have to save for?
Yeah. And I like the idea that you said you're kind of enjoying it for a period, because I think
Yeah,
that's important, isn't it? It's like, pat yourself on the back, you've done that amazing
yeah.
goal. Now enjoy it for a bit before you move on to the next bit, because otherwise, I guess, because there's so many steps, I guess, along the way until retirement, I guess, that you probably want to appreciate each one rather than just going on and on and on. Because
Yeah.
I guess there are people, you see Instagram accounts all the time, people who are quite very tunnel vision and don't
Mhm.
enjoy the process along the way. So just a bit about the Instagram page. So yeah, so it's I put the link in the description down below, but same for a new way, isn't it? It's got
Yeah,
underscores between the
yeah,
words,
yeah.
and you've had that for about just over 2 years
2 years,
now.
yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what prompted you to start the page? Was it kind of to motivate you along?
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of motivation, but also when you've got your own name on an account, so my full name, my personal account, you're less likely to share information. Now, it wasn't that I wanted to put on, like, this is exactly how much money we've got. At the beginning, that was that. I mean, when I started documenting the mortgage freedom, I did start putting actual figures there. But well, oh, this is how much I've got saved, and this is what I want to do, because someone, I don't know, a friend of a friend might see the name and go, oh, have you seen what such and such has put on Instagram? So I wanted kind of anonymity. Is that the
Yeah.
right word? Yeah,
Yeah.
of being able to post kind of what I wanted to post. But also, I used to see people where they would post things which I didn't necessarily agree with. Like, you see a lot of people now, they're like, right, well, this is how you can save money when you're buying such and such, like things which, like Sheen hauls, and what's the other one, Temu, and things like that.
Yeah.
And they were doing things like, oh, if you follow this link, you can get money off. I wanted to do more of the this is how you would save money on day-to-day things which you would need, like your food shop, like changing to a different gas and electric provider, making sure that you're doing a list for a food shop, because that to me is a big one. I always kind of focus back on food, because I think it's the area you can save money very easily on, especially if you're not kind of planning it already. So that's kind of, I want to do more hints and tips as opposed to If you're going to spend money, do it this way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it does. And so obviously you've built a bit of a following on the page, and now that you sort of hit the mortgage-free goal, are you planning on documenting kind of the other, once you've had your
Yeah.
period of enjoyment, are you going to be documenting your other goals that you're saving towards?
Yeah, I think I will do. I don't know if I would necessarily put on the exact amounts that I want to save. Um, so I think one thing you've got to bear in mind is that we're in the northeast of England and things are cheaper, especially property. And the big goal, which I've been very open and honest with, is that we want to move down to Devon. And the prices of houses are substantially more. Now, we would like to do that in the next 5 years, and we would like to do that mortgage free, just having cash from this house and also having a set like a pot. My job is remote, so I can be anywhere. My husband's isn't, so it will be a case of dropping down to one salary, and there's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot. It's going to be harder work to do than it was to do the mortgage freedom, and I think I will try and share kind of goals that we are trying to work towards, but maybe not as much as this is the set amount of money we want to save. And I don't want it to look as though we get paid an absolute fortune. We don't. We get paid. We get paid money, like a set amount, and we're very careful with it. So it looks like we have got extra money, but it's not. It's not necessarily the case. We could be going out every week
Yeah,
and drinking and spending it, and going for meals. Or if we had childcare, I mean, I couldn't believe when someone told us how much childcare costs. That is so expensive. Like that's ridiculous. I don't know how people actually afford it. Um,
yeah,
so our circumstances are very different to other people. And I don't want it to look as though we're kind of showing off how much we've got in the bank. I am a bit conscious of that now. I've had things said to us by family members um, that I've made us kind of think, right, well, I shouldn't be sharing all this information with people because they're not in the same circumstances. That may make them feel a bit uneasy. And I don't think you get the engagement as well on your socials if it looks as though you're kind of showing off.
yeah,
Um, I have noticed that. I've never had trolls or anything like that. I'm not a big account, but I do know that sometimes when I see people going, "Oh, well, I've spent £2,000 on a new designer handbag," I'm like, "Yeah, I don't need to see that on my page. That's
yeah,
kind of, you know, that's a bit showy." Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I know what you mean. It's like it's finding the balance, isn't it? Because I always think I've been quite lucky that my parents have always talked about money with
yeah,
us, but I know for some people, like some people I know who've got bad money habits, well, they seem like bad money habits because they're living in the overdraft and stuff. But
yeah,
some of that probably like it does come down to when I say like, oh well, what your parents,
yeah,
what were they like with money? And they're like, oh, I don't know, like it's never been talked about.
yes,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah,
sometimes like it's that thing, isn't it? If you only see the people online who are spending
yeah,
money on material
yeah,
things,
yeah,
how would you ever see the other side of the coin in that there's actually people who just put the money into mortgage overpayments
yeah,
or are saving or investing? But you're right, yeah, it's like sometimes it can get, I think sometimes when you put, it's like if you put the actual numbers down, the first thing what people do is when they look at it is go, well, you live in the northeast, so it doesn't apply
yeah,
to me. So I'm in London, so how
yeah,
can I take anything away from your account? Because if I lived in the northeast, I'd be in the same position.
yeah,
Like, so it is a hard one. But yeah, I find Instagram like is in like being a consumer of the content, it's great in some sense, but it's also frustrating in others because you
yeah,
sometimes what you look at something and you're like that's not good advice. Like it's not
yeah,
good guidance for someone else
exactly,
to
yeah,
follow.
yeah,
Because I'm a bit like you. It's like sometimes you have people who or say like, oh, this is a great deal on food or whatever,
yeah,
but either the buying more to get the saving. So they might
yeah,
be saving £30, but they've spent, 150, £160 on a weekly food shop.
yeah,
Or like they're doing a haul of what they've got for cheap and like it's all processed stuff that's not very healthy. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah,
I pay more on my food, but I try and be a bit healthy.
yeah,
So Yeah, it's interesting. And do you have any sort of accounts that you would recommend other people follow? Any kind of ones that have influenced you in terms of money or
So when I first started, I followed kind of big accounts. So I followed like Thrifty Living, who has now changed her name. And from the top of my head, I cannot remember her name. She's called Lisa. And also Thrifty Claire. And they were, like I say, they were more about the everyday savings rather than the big life-changing amounts that you could do. Like the realistic, what I would say more in our situations, they were trying to do the overpayments of the mortgage. You know, they both did weddings. My God, I wish you had been on these accounts when I got married, because they both did weddings on a budget and were both absolutely fantastic. And you look and thought, well, I got married at a museum in the northeast of England, and ours was very different. They do 4 or 5 weddings a year. It was very different, but it still cost a lot of money. And I bought all of the knickknacks, the favors, the presents, and this, that, and the other. Now looking back, I think, crikey, I could have went to a second-hand shop and bought a lovely dress, because we do have a lovely place locally that does display ones and second-hand wedding dresses. So those are the ones where I kind of follow and thought they are who I want to be. And there's a lot of other ones, and I can't remember any of the names. I could tell you what they do. But people who do go out and they go to Lidl, and they manage to get like the boxes of fruit and veg that are being reduced, or they've stacked deals online. In Pickle Savings, she's really good. To like her, very sweary, but she admits that herself. But she does things where, like, oh wait, well, I've stacked this deal and I've got cash back from this. And it's people who use kind of jam donut, where you buy the vouchers and things,
yes.
and all these offers where they are, if you're going to use them, if you're going to go out and you need to do a food shop, and you can go to Asda and you can buy a £100 voucher and you get 4% back. Now that's not £4, not a substantial amount, but actually over the year that is a lot of money. So it's the accounts where they are doing realistic day-to-day savings, rather than oh well, I'm going to go out and buy X, Y, and Z, but if you follow this link you'll get 10% off, where you're encouraging people to buy stuff. Those are the accounts that I don't follow. I don't follow the, oh well, why don't you buy this, and if you get money off. Whereas I want to follow the ones where it's the day-to-day savings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just go
That's
back to
good.
what you said about parents and their habits.
Hmm.
So I definitely think that now you're very much, if you don't speak about money with your family, you're less likely to have any form of idea as to what to do when you start living by yourself.
Mm.
My husband's family didn't speak about money, whereas my parents, I knew how much, well, not necessarily exact amounts, but I knew that the mortgage had to be paid, all the council tax. And I remember in the 90s, we used to have to stand in queue and pay these bills because
Mm.
direct debits weren't a thing.
Yeah.
So I do definitely think that seeing people around you and how they manage money is one of the big influences as to how you learn. My parents didn't have masses of money when I was growing up, but we didn't go without.
Yeah.
Parents who didn't have like the latest names or anything like that, but my parents always made sure that we had a holiday every year, and it might have meant that they didn't go out for nights out or anything like that. I can remember once in a blue moon they would have a night out, whereas it's not the norm now. Most people have like a few trips out every month. I know parents, like I know friends who are parents, and like, oh well, I'm going here and I'm doing this, and I'm like, wow, that didn't happen when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But it is what is now normal, that people do want to go out, and especially since lockdown, I think people want to spend more time with others
Yeah.
than what we had, like the habits we had before COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true that I remember like that thing about having to go out and pay the bills. Like I'm the youngest in of my brothers and sisters, and I used to have to go on like a weekend with my
Yeah.
mom when she used to go, and she'd like, I'm just going to have to pop in to pay the rates, and then she'd go and
Yeah,
pay
yeah,
this
yeah,
stuff, and then would go for the weekly shop. And I was always like, and because my mom, I rarely saw my mom spend on a debit card. It was all cash stuff. Like I
yeah,
always remember her having to be like, oh well. how much have I got left to spend? Like, oh, that's a bit expensive, so I'll go elsewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we it's funny because my mum always says like she finds it sometimes a bit alien now because like some of my brothers they all have kids and they'll and she'll look after them, that's fine. She loves looking after them. But sometimes if she hears, but maybe not them, but maybe the friends that have complain about not having nights out, just the two of them, she'll be like, well, we didn't do that when we were younger. Like
No.
literally we're like sacrifice, like would we're just but it was part and parcel. You've got young kids, we'll do stuff as a family, but we're probably gonna sacrifice the meals out
Yeah.
because one, either we can't really afford it, or two, we can't afford the childcare while we're out
Yeah.
if we don't have help. So it's funny how I think generationally, like things have shifted, and I think sometimes people look back and go, oh, people had it much easier in the 80s or 90s for buying a house. And you sort of, it might be true in terms of
Yeah.
a money side of things, but actually, I think most people, the norm was in the 80s and 90s that um, parents really kind of sacrificed a lot and
Yeah.
like they didn't go for fancy meals. Like when I was a kid, I think it was when it was our birthday, sometimes we used to all go for a curry.
Yeah.
In South Shields, so if anyone in the northeast there's
Yeah.
there's a road where there's loads of curry houses. We used to go there for a birthday meal, but we never used to eat out
Yeah.
throughout the year. Maybe like a McDonald's as a treat sometimes,
Yeah.
but whereas now I think my nieces and nephews they find it quite normal that like on a weekend they might go out for something to eat, and I'm like, wow, like that's they don't really know. It's not their fault, but they don't really know that that's like a fortunate thing to
Yeah.
be able to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. I think, I mean, like I don't have kids, but I do have friends who have kids, and their lives, I kind of look and go, wow, they go out and do stuff with their kids all the time. When when I was younger, the 6 weeks holiday, my mum didn't work, and that was quite a normal thing, especially up here. That only the dad went out and worked and earned the keep, and my mum stayed at home and raised me and my sister. And I remember in the 6 weeks holidays, we would go up to, this is going back to the 90s, up to Newcastle Airport on the metro and sit and watch the planes take off. I mean, it used to bore the life out of us, but now I can look and think, yeah, your 6 weeks being off, that is a lot of money to do an
Yeah,
activity every single day. And we were fortunate, like even when my mum started working, she became a childminder. So it was still occupying me and my sister and a small child, normally a baby, for 6 weeks non-stop. She never got a break. And I think now I'm older, I can appreciate how much she actually did and how much she made money go. So
yeah,
she, we would quite often meet. We used to live next to a metro station, and we'd quite often meet other parents, again, other women, other mothers locally, to then go down the beach and would have a fun day. It would cost what, 20 pence, crikey, 20 pence on the metro to go to Cullercoats or Tynemouth, and what, £1 for a bag of chips. And that was our day out, and we made it really
yeah,
fun. And I think now, I'm speaking to one of my friends, and she went, oh yeah, I'm taking them to a trampoline park, and it's costing £15 each for 2 hours. And I was like, that's a lot of money.
yeah,
That is, when you've got 3 kids, that's a substantial amount of money. And she was like, yeah, and I'm taking this day off, and my mum's having them this day. And I'm sat there thinking, crikey, it sounds like a logistical nightmare having
yeah,
childcare from various aunties, uncles, grandparents, friends of friends. And I sit there and think, wow, that's crazy how much money you've got to kind of have in order to kind of live for weekends and through school holidays.
mm.
It's Yeah, it's definitely different than the 90s.
And so you mentioned about some of your long-term goals in terms of moving to Devon and what, apart from enjoying kind of your money for the next few months, have you got any other sort of goals for 2024? Did you mention kind of a new boiler might be on the horizon?
I mean, it's not really a goal, it's unfortunately an essential. Yeah, so it's something we've kind of been putting off and going, oh, we've got another year out of it, great. But it is something that I think would need a new boiler. We also will probably need a new car as well. Now, my car, I posted out it last year. My husband bought it for £300. It cost basically to get on the road about £1,000, and I'm not going to lie, it's like driving something from the 80s, but it works. And
Yeah.
that's all I'm interested in. Whereas my husband does do a lot more mileage, he travels a little bit for work. Um, so he does need something more reliable. And looking at the price of secondhand cars now is like, wow, that's a lot of money. So it is something that we have to now factor in. We need to save for that. His car will be about 10, 12 years now. So it is something that, it's a depreciating asset. You've unfortunately got to pay for his job, he needs to have a car. Now I work from home. I don't have that. I don't have the petrol. I mean, I fill it once a month. Yeah, I am lucky in that way. Um, so yeah, it unfortunately, yes, we need to save towards a new car. We also pay in quite a bit into our pensions, and that was something that I got into. I was 18. I knew I needed a pension, and whilst I could afford it, I just kept on adding money to it. And every year on my birthday, I increased that by 0.5% because I am in that position that I can't afford that. So I suppose long term, I want to retire by 60. Um, I'm 35 now. I don't know what the retirement age is going to be by the time I
Yeah.
actually get there. I think we're quite young. I'm not sure how old you are, but I feel like the goalposts just get further and further, and I want to be able to have some form of retirement that I'm going to enjoy. I look at my grandma, and she said that a taxi and go to the doctors, or jump in a taxi and go to such and such, and having that not being so get like careful with money that you can't live, but also being able to go right. Well, I don't want to have to stand for the bus. I'm 90 odd years old. I don't want
Yeah.
to stand, and so I want to be able to have a comfortable retirement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And I think I'm of a similar mindset of that. Like, I feel like we can't, I'm 33. I can't depend on the state to like, because the goalposts are moving.
yeah,
If I want a comfortable retirement, I'm gonna have to pay for it myself. So, I think I think that's the facts on it, isn't it? So it's as you say, it's building up the pension that you've got, privately or with your workplace,
yes,
and
yeah,
yeah, making sure you've got assets, I guess, when you
yeah.
get to being old. I mean, it was funny. I watched an interview the other day with Miriam Margolyes, who's like the
Oh
actress,
yeah,
and she's quite known for being outspoken, and
yes,
but asking about she's got a new book out. And they were asking about like, oh, what prompted you to do it? And she was like, I got paid a lot of money. And she's in her 80s, but she said, I was just doing all these videos on, Cameo where you get paid for doing a happy birthday message to
yeah,
someone. And she's
yeah,
doing all this, and she said she's getting paid a lot for it. But she said for her, she knows that there'll be a time when she needs care. And she
yeah,
said she wants to make sure that she's able to pay the people who care for her like a good wage,
yeah,
and she's gonna have to, she's rich, so she's not going to get money from the sort of state, like the government, to
yeah,
do that. So she's paying for it. And I thought, oh, that's quite a interesting way to look at it, because I guess I think for anyone really, like the costs, if you want a comfortable retirement, there
yeah,
will there will be a lot. And as you say, I can imagine I'd like to be the same, going to nipping in a taxi if I need to go somewhere,
yeah,
so that I'm
yeah.
not having to wait at a bus stop, or yeah.
I
So
mean, the price of care, I mean, that's a whole different subject. But we've just had a relative in a care home, and he was paying just under £1,000 a week. And that was not advanced care. That was not dementia. That was not MS. It wasn't any physical kind of, he wasn't classified as disabled or anything. He was just an old man who at home he couldn't cope, so he needed additional care. And I mean, he had thankfully a substantial amount of money because he sold his property in order to move into care. But that not many people can afford that. I mean, £1,000 a week, that's 52,000 pounds a year. I mean, if you're selling a property, my house is currently valued about 150,000. That's 3 years worth of care.
yeah.
That's not a lot.
Yeah, I think like I always hope that I mean I'm not gonna be a billionaire to do this, but if I was like one of these people who was like the mega rich in the UK, I just want one of them to think, right, I'm gonna put money like as a charity sort of gesture. I'm gonna like try and find out what sort of care model works, like how can we make it that carers get paid a lot
Yeah,
like a good wage,
yeah,
but we'll have a model where like I don't know, like it's subsidized in some
yeah,
way. So like because there's I just think if I was a billionaire, say, you can't you're hoarding all that wealth. I know you've
yeah,
made it, but like imagine how many people how many care homes you could
yeah, could
fund
benefit.
it in the UK if you had that money. Because I'm like that, I think for my parents, I mean they're only in the kind of mid 60s at the moment, but
Yeah,
I'm thinking, like I think it's unfortunate that they might have to sell their house
yeah,
to pay for care. And probably, I mean, we're probably lucky in the sense that I'm one of five, so
yeah,
you can probably envisage a case where there could be, if they needed care, they could be cared for at home because there's enough of us to kind of dish up
yeah,
responsibilities and stuff. But yeah, it must be quite hard. I mean, as like for me, I don't have any children. I'm probably not gonna have any children,
yeah,
so it's like when I'm in my 80s, there's probably not going to be
yeah.
someone who's going to be helping to care for me as a family member. It probably will have to be in a formal sort of care setting.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, nowadays, I mean, you go back to, say, the 90s, my father-in-law, his parents, his mum passed away very sudden. And he didn't, it was a shock to the full family that she had passed away. His dad, however, had to go into a care home and they had a lot of problems getting him settled. The care wasn't there. Unfortunately, the home wasn't the best. And he kind of unfortunately escaped several times. Um, he didn't have dementia, but he did have a memory problem. But he would just have to drop work and go. Nowadays, we couldn't do that.
Mm,
It was very much like, you've got an elderly relative. The next generation would look after them, sorry. And now, I mean, my mother-in-law, her mum, she's just moved into a care kind of environment. And before that, the three daughters were having to look after them. Thankfully, two of them were retired and could, do shifts and stuff. But one of the sisters wasn't retired, and she also had her own family. And you can see the pressure mounting on
yeah,
the siblings to look after, to be the care providers. And like you say, you may not have children. I don't want children. Who's going to be looking after us in these
yeah,
years? And that is something now. I think you don't want to dwell on it and go, oh God, I've got to fund my retirement and I'm 25, I haven't even bought my first house. But I think something that is in the back of your mind is, well, I'm seeing other people having these problems now. What's this going to be like for me in a few years' time? You know, my nana, her partner who passed away in 2019, he had dementia and he had very good pensions. He had a pension from the army, he had a pension from one of the local breweries because he was a long distance lorry driver, and he had a very, there was quite a lot of money coming in every month. But the council still had to top up his pensions in order to pay for his care because he had dementia. And you see things like that and think, crikey, I've got a private pension, I'll also get a state pension. But do I need extra funds in order to pay
yeah,
for long-term care? You never know what's around the corner. And I think now people are being, especially at the moment, are being a lot more aware of money. We are trying to think quite long term. Have got different change in government now. Hopefully things will change. But yeah, I mean, we're talking 30 odd years time, but hopefully it's a different kind of situation. We're not having to be saving for pensions, well, sorry, saving for care when we're in our 20s and we can enjoy life a bit more.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
do find that when I was on my mortgage free journey, I was kind of saving and saving, and people were like, well, why don't you enjoy it? And I'm thinking, well, I will enjoy it when I get there. And I'll
yeah,
still, and I'm conscious now that I need to make sure that we are still enjoying ourselves. We are still going on holiday, we are still going for meals out, what have you. But we are still aware that we want to achieve different things that will allow us even more money to be able to spend on things we want.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I think we've talked, a lot about the finances. It's been great to hear your perspective. And then, yeah, just in terms of personal goals, do you have any personal goals that you're trying to achieve this year or longer term?
Um, Personal goals. Nothing related to finance. I want to start working on myself a bit more. Start being a bit more healthy. get more into it. One thing I've started to do, which has cost a little bit more money, is I've started doing Pilates classes, and those are things which they are quite pricey. And I'm at the gym and I do other bits and pieces. And I want to be able to try and like kind of have a more healthy lifestyle. And I think also your mindset as well. Like my mind, sometimes I'd get so worked up about things um, that I wouldn't have like an outburst. I'd kind of like things would come on top of us quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I have spoke about mental health on my page. And I think at the moment, I think a lot of people are finding that they'll have a lot of pressure. And now I'm in the position where I'm thinking, right, well, actually, I've got the spare income that I can then do things that I'm enjoying. So I
Yeah.
am enjoying running at the moment. I've joined a club. I started Pilates, which it kind of settles your mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, personal goals. I wouldn't say I've got like a set one. I just want to start living a more healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a few more holidays. We don't fly. My husband doesn't like fly, and so yeah, we want to go on a cruise. Hopefully, at some point this year, we just need to actually book it because we keep on going. Oh, we'll book that one, and then it sells out. We're like, damn, we didn't find
Yeah.
it.
No, that sounds good. I mean, I'd love to go on a cruise. It's definitely a goal in the future.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, then they sound good personal goals. I think having a like be more healthy and focusing on yourself. I think it's
yeah,
good because I think I'm this. I'm the same way in that, like, I think sometimes if I focus too much on work or like the sort of stresses of life,
yeah,
sometimes it gets away from it. Like your mental health, I think, can decline a bit. And
yeah,
then, you've got to sometimes remember, even when you're busy or you're feeling stressful, actually just make the time for yourself.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Yeah, but no, that's been a really good conversation. Was there anything you wanted to add before we end? Any sort of lasting top tip you've got for someone listening?
Um, Start now. Don't wait off until the new year, the new month, or when you've got a set of goals. Start now if you're going to try and learn how to budget, and be prepared to make mistakes. We're not perfect. There's many times that I'll come to the end of the month and go, wow, I've spent £500 on food shop. Where on earth that money gone from? Like, I've eaten it obviously, but why is it so much? So yeah, start and being prepared that life is not perfect. Things will happen, but try to be more prepared and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, brilliant. No,
Yeah,
that's some really good advice. And yeah, thanks for being a guest and chatting to us today. And I'll leave the link to your Instagram page down in the description box down below. So thanks very much.
no problem. Thank you.
Thanks.